This vintage photograph shows a bustling Indian railway station in the early 1900s. Imagine dusk settling over a platform like this in 1901. A 10-year-old boy is stranded, waiting for his father. The station master and local cart drivers walk right past him. They refuse to offer him a ride because he belongs to the Mar community, a group strictly classified by society as untouchable. He and his siblings eventually convince a driver to let them rent a cart, but only if they drive it themselves. The boy's throat is dry. He pulls up to a toll booth and tries to lie about his religion to get a drink, knowing a Hindu keeper would deny him. The keeper senses the truth, and the boy is turned away, his thirst completely ignored. This isolation followed him into the classroom. While other children sat together, he was forced onto a rough gunny sack in the hallway. He had to carry the sack back and forth every day, because the school cleaner refused to touch an object used by a Mar. Drinking water at school was governed by the no peon, no water rule. He was forbidden from touching the communal water jug and had to wait for an upper caste staff member to pour water into his cupped hands from a distance. If that specific peon was absent, the boy went thirsty. Before he was old enough to understand the world had already mapped out his boundaries. An arbitrary label assigned at birth dictated where he could sit, who would speak to him, and whether he was allowed to drink. These acts of exclusion were the precise requirements of a rigid social architecture. Every instance of discrimination was justified and actively enforced by the religious texts and scriptures of the time. This is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Decades after sitting on that gunny sack, he wrote the speech Annihilation of Caste. He diagnosed the caste system as a systemic social disease, arguing that a society cannot be reformed while the religious foundations of its inequality remain intact. As a student, his father, a military subedar, pointed him toward the only domain that didn't care about his lineage: education. Books do not check a reader's caste before opening their pages. His survival depended on reaching a level of academic expertise that would force the hierarchy to reckon with his presence. This view shows Columbia University in New York. A scholarship from the Maharaja of Baroda allowed Ambedkar to study here, and later at the London School of Economics. For a few years, the invisible barrier vanished. Inside these foreign classrooms, he was treated purely as a student and judged entirely by the sharpness of his mind. But reality returned the moment he stepped back onto Indian soil. Despite holding elite degrees, he took a post as the military secretary in Baroda, only to find his subordinates throwing files onto his desk to avoid physical contact with him. Finding housing was a struggle. He rented a room at a Parsi inn under a false name. But when his true caste was discovered, an angry mob armed with sticks forced him out into the night. Education had expanded his intellect, but it failed to dismantle the prejudices of his society. A doctorate from Columbia could not secure him a place to sleep in his own country. He channeled that humiliation into public action. In 1927, he led thousands to a public water tank in Mahad. Drinking that water was a declaration of human dignity against centuries of denial. His approach led to sharp ideological divides with leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. While Gandhi sought to reform the caste system from within, Ambedkar demanded its total destruction and fought for independent political representation for the marginalized. This is the Indian Constituent Assembly in 1946. Ambedkar was appointed to chair the drafting committee, tasked with defining the legal framework for a newly independent nation. He embedded his lifelong struggle directly into the law. He drafted Article 17, which legally abolished untouchability and established constitutional guarantees for equality in education, employment, and civil rights. The Constitution was his blueprint for a new society, a legally binding framework designed to permanently dismantle the system that had once denied him water. However, a legal framework does not automatically erase a social reality. Modern data shows that discrimination has survived the laws intended to end it. This mirrors global civil rights struggles. Just as the United States faced systemic pushback during 1950s school desegregation, India's elite institutions continue to exhibit deep-seated resistance to inclusion. At the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the 2007 Thorat Committee report found that marginalized students were systematically isolated on specific hostel floors and denied academic guidance. In 2012, the Manjikar Committee uncovered direct bias at Safdarjung Hospital. Exam papers were tagged by caste, deliberately failing marginalized students. The courts eventually intervened, overturning these grades and applying the Atrocities Act against the leadership. While the crude segregation of 1901 is gone, these institutions have developed subtle administrative methods to enforce the same biases. Ambedkar's legacy provides two primary tools: a foundation of logical argumentation and a codified system of constitutional protections. But the law has limits. A legal framework cannot fully cure a nation while social prejudice remains a part of the dominant culture. Achieving true equality requires an active, ongoing adherence to his final instruction: educate, agitate, organize.